listen to this video, see if it inspires you. Again, I think it's such a great sport, especially if you live in New York, where tennis is harder to come by, it's more expensive, weather isn't great in the winter. Squash, you can play all year round. You can fit in between, meetings in your lunch break, which again is a huge selling point for me. So has a lot of benefits, great workout, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So encourage it.
We're here for another episode of Boast About It. My name's James Green, and I'm here with Alex Grego. Alex, welcome.
Nice to be here. Thanks, James.
It's great to see you. So, Alex, we're here today because you emailed me and you're like, I've transitioned from tennis to squash and I want to write a blog about it. And we have a blog to accompany this. You've written it now.
Mm-hmm.
But before we start talking about everything you've written about, talk to me about your tennis experience, and then let's talk about the transition from tennis to squash.
Sure. So I'm originally from Barcelona, Spain.
Yeah.
And really, tennis was my sport growing up. I started playing since I was, 3 or 4 years old. My parents both played. And I played competitively in both regional and national tournaments all the way until I was, 17, 18. So in juniors.
Give us an idea how good were you ranked in the country? And
yeah, I had a national ranking. I've played people who have gone on to become professional. I love the sport. I still try to play when I can. It's just in New York City, as you might imagine, it's tough. There's not that many courts. It's expensive. The weather isn't great to play outside. Yeah. So yeah, I moved to the United States when I was 24 or something like that. I lived in Washington, D.C. I moved there for work. And then I went to do an MBA at the University of Virginia. And that's where
they have great squash courts there.
Yes. I forget what the center is called, but yeah, they have a new facility.
Like the Boar's Head?
Boar's Head Resort, yeah. They're investing a lot of money into their squash program. I think from what I've heard, the squash team, the varsity team, didn't used to be that good, and now I think is up with the top programs in the country.
You may not know this, but there's a tournament, the World Masters Tournament, and it's been held in the United States once. Mm-hmm. It was held
in Charlottesville at the University of Virginia.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I did not know
that.
So
I played on those courts.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
When I was in Charlottesville getting my MBA, that was really when I came into contact with squash. I had a couple of classmates that played. And again, coming from tennis, I was like, oh, this is a racket sport. How bad can it be, right? I'm sure the skills will translate. And then, so that's when I really started playing more squash. Like you were saying, the facilities are amazing over there. And I started playing, and I really enjoyed it. I liked that it's an amazing workout. I think it's a better workout than tennis. In tennis,
it's more intense.
It's more intense. It's more efficient too. I think in tennis.
Well, New Yorkers would love that. More
yes,
efficient.
Exactly. Yes.
Go in, I think that's why get out.
I encourage tennis players in New York to try squash if they haven't already, because it's so efficient. In tennis, it takes you a long time to warm up and to get into a groove. Squash, 45 minutes, and you're completely winded, and you're on the floor. So I started playing more and more. Started to, enjoy the dynamics of the sport, started discovering the tactical aspect of it, which is so interesting. At the beginning, you start playing squash and you're like, oh, this is just smacking a ball against a wall as hard as you can, right? But slowly, you start playing more and you start discovering there's so many tactics, so many play patterns that you're supposed to play.
I'm going to make myself a little depressed here, but how long ago was it when you started playing squash?
2021, so it's been 4 years.
So it's taken you 4 years, and last time we played, you beat me in 5. And I've played 25 years. So there's definitely some translation, or you're just very talented.
I think there's certain things that translate well, for instance, the hand-eye coordination and racket skills translate well. Volleying and drop shots translate really well.
True. Things that I do with a tennis player, when I'm like, oh, you're a tennis player, I try to do 2 things. 1, angles. I try to play it off every wall, just things that a tennis player is not expecting. And I try to avoid letting them volley it.
Yes.
They're so good at volleying.
Yeah. And we have a we have a penchant for volleying, right? Because in tennis you're taught to like move forward and finish the point early and whatnot. So we always want to get in front and like try to volley the ball. So it's smart strategy. I mean, like, yeah, it's very thoughtful.
But in your blog, you came up with these, should we call them 10 rules? 10 rules? Do you call them rules?
Yeah, 10 rules for transitioning tennis players. I also want to say, like, you know, I've played other racket sports and I think they apply. I also play a lot of padel, like coming from Spain. It's a very popular sport there.
It's growing in popularity.
A lot, yeah, here in New York as well. So I think it applies to like more sports than one, but obviously my case is coming from tennis. And I think there's a lot of people who are also in my situation, you know, coming from
so
tennis.
you think whether you were coming from padel to squash or tennis to squash or some other racket sport to squash, these rules would apply?
Probably, yeah. So certain ones like will apply more to tennis than the others, but generally I think they apply to anyone coming from another racket
like
sport.
it. Let's dig in. Rule number 1.
The first thing I realized really when I started playing squash is how different the movement is. I took a squash lesson and the first thing that the coach told me was, I hear your shoes squeaking too much. In tennis, you're really taught to take small steps towards the ball, to adjust your position with very small, quick steps. And the coach quickly told me, this is not going to fly here. This is not how you do it in squash.
And you're tall. Like
I know, I'm 6'4".
I think you're taller than me. Yeah, I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
You do not want to take. You have a huge advantage, your stride and your wingspan.
Yeah, but it's sort of like a double-edged sword because of how I was moving coming from tennis. I was almost, and you know, obviously like squash court is much smaller. I was like a bull in a china shop almost. And yeah, so he really taught me, he's like, I don't want to hear your shoes squeaking. You're supposed to take big lunges, maximum 3 steps towards the ball. So you can go in, strike the ball, and then retreat back to the tee, you know, and avoid lets and strokes and that sort of thing. So that was a huge like light bulb moment for me, was changing my movement and something that like really upgraded my game. In the
Rule
early
number
days.
1, no small steps, big steps and lunges. Rule number 2.
Getting low, which again, I think is something that...
Well, it's for you and me. I'm 6'3", you're 6'4". That is just so
It's
hard.
tough for us, yes. Getting low is super, super important and something that is, you think you're doing, but then you see yourself play and you realize that you can do so much more. You can get so much lower.
Yeah.
I have a bad habit of like, I think because we're tall, like you reach and you like bend your back and try to like use your length to get to balls, instead of like really using like a big lunge and getting low to like hit the ball. That was such a like an upgrade in my game when I started to like apply that a little bit more consciously. I found that I was like striking the ball so much better when I had like a solid base, when I was like well planted on the court, instead of just like reaching for the ball.
So number 2 is getting low. Mm-hmm. Rule number 3.
Letting the ball come to you, which again, I think is something that, you know, took a big adjustment coming from tennis. In tennis, you're taught to move very aggressively towards the ball. And I think something that can be confusing for tennis players coming into a squash court, which is smaller and the ball is bouncing off of the walls all the time, is that you actually can wait for the ball to come to you.
This is why my angles work with tennis players, because they go to the first place the ball goes.
Yes.
And it continues to go away.
Yes, and I at first, like, and it's something that I still struggle with as well, is like, you think you don't have time, when in reality you do. Like when you play a little bit more relaxed, you realize that you don't need to be rushing to the corners to get the ball. Like you can afford to like wait a little bit and then like set up well for the shot and then hit. So that was again another adjustment. I think it pairs a little bit with like the steps and the lunges, but again, realizing that you have more time than you think, and then you can wait for the ball, and that also has the benefit in squash. You know, deception is a super important skill, right?
Yeah.
So if you wait for the ball, that also has the benefit of like you're making your opponent guess a little bit, right? So if you can hold your shot a little bit longer, you cause that doubt in your opponent, and you can you can use that skill of deception by waiting a little bit.
Rule number 3. Wait for the ball to come to you. Rule number 4.
Rule number 4, going to sound super obvious, but stretch really well. Squash is like...
Oh, just regular stretching.
Yes, and stretching that applies to squash, right?
Yeah.
I think the muscles that you use in squash, even though you might think that racket sport, oh, it'll be similar to tennis, very different.
What were the muscles that hurt the most after your first squash game?
My glutes. That's like I could not walk after the first few times I played squash. Again, because I was going in thinking, oh, this will be a cakewalk. And then you start realizing that all that getting low, all that lunging really gets to you.
Yeah.
So again, might sound super obvious, but like find a good stretching routine that's specific to squash. Like the first time I was playing, I went on YouTube and I Googled, okay, like squash stretching routine. And I've been using it since I started playing.
What do you do?
First, I warm up my legs, so I do like kicks and then like from side to side, like making sure like stretching the legs well. Then it's really all the like hips and glutes, really like getting that loose is super important for squash. So that's really what I do. Any stretch that helps open up your hips and stretches your glutes is perfect for squash, and it'll make a world of a difference when you go to play on the court. I notice it like when sometimes I've played like a league match and I've come, rushing from work and whatnot,
You've been sitting down all day long.
Exactly. And instead, another day you'll come in like half an hour in advance and you'll very deliberately stretch. The quality of your game, it just goes to another level.
Rule number 4, stretch. I think that applies to most sports.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rule number 5.
Pace yourself, which I think is something that tennis players also struggle with. Again, something I realized after playing a few times and playing people who are actually good, and I've noticed it now more going from like a 4.5 level to a 5.0. Really, you win matches by tiring your opponent out and really wearing them out and being able to like play the long game. Tennis rewards like the 1-2 punch. When I played tennis, I'm a tall guy also, like I had a big serve and like I went for like a big forehand and tried to end points early. And that's how I tried to play squash at the beginning. And I realized that, it's a...
By the way, that does work at lower levels.
It does, yes.
So it can be a very bad habit to get out of, right? Because when you first play squash, not so good players, you serve and you try to kill it, the person can't get it, and you're like, oh, that's how I play squash. But it just puts a ceiling on your game.
Exactly, yeah. It's very high risk, right? Like one, it might work once, but then another, you try to go for a kill shot and then you kind of mishit it a little bit and then like the ball sits up and a good player will punish that.
Yeah.
So instead, I've been trying to focus more on like hitting accurate, good lengths, hitting with like the right weight of shot, and really tiring your opponent out. I think in the long run, and if you watch the pros, that's really how they play, right? Is they really focus on hitting the ball tight to the side walls, and really only going for the kill shot when they're in a very advantageous position, right? I think I had a bad habit of like, because we were talking about earlier how, like racket skills might translate and you think, oh, I have like a good racket skill, I can afford to like hit a drop shot from like the back corner. No, I mean, that again, that might
Low
work
percentage
once,
shot.
but it's a low percentage shot. So when I shifted, instead of like trying to do that better, I started to like focus more on like, can I keep the rally going, hit good rails, hit close to the wall, and then eventually you're going to squeeze out a loose shot from your opponent, which then you can go ahead, you can go ahead and kill.
Rule number 5, pacing yourself. Rule number 6.
Give every point the respect it deserves. Again, might sound obvious, but if you're coming from tennis, tennis matches are longer than squash matches. Average tennis match can be 2 hours, longer than 2 hours sometimes. A squash match can be over in like half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not well matched, it can be 15 minutes.
Yes. Something that I struggled with in competitive matches sometimes was the lack of concentration. Because, I thought, okay, I have some time to like get into the groove of things.
Oh yeah, you have no time.
But you have really no time. You really have to go in with a lot of focus. So that was something that I really had to consciously work at, right? And be very deliberate about playing every point well. Don't go for a crazy shot, but treat every point like its own match almost, right? And no matter if like you're in front or behind, try to like isolate yourself from that. but just like treat every point with the respect it deserves. And that involves like having like a little bit of a routine between points that helps ground yourself. So you play every point with, you know, very, very deliberately and with the right strategy and the right tactics.
Yeah, that is such good advice. I'm really bad at that. I'm really bad at it.
Really, it's an exercise in focus and concentration, which is really tough to do. But I think like squash also like teaches you well on how to do that.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that was rule number 6, which is
Give every point the respect it deserves.
rule number 7.
Play with height, which was also a big unlock for my game, coming from tennis.
Now, I don't play tennis, but I mean, occasionally people hit it way high, but mostly it's right above the net, right?
Yeah, you play in tennis. You hit lobs when you're in a defensive position, right, to try to get past your opponent who might be at the net. I think something that I didn't do early on in my squash journey was use the entire front wall. I was hitting very much like horizontal all the time and hitting hard. Mm-hmm. And I started realizing that like I could sort of like bail myself out of tough situations by playing with height and using the whole front wall.
Yeah.
A really underrated shot, I think, the lob, and people don't use it enough at the amateur level. When you see I
Pros
think
use it all the time.
Exactly. I think I started using it when I was watching like YouTube videos like of the PSA,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, I think I should apply this in my game a little bit more.
Wait a minute, if Asal uses it, Cole uses it, Elias uses it, they all use it, maybe I should use it too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's something you don't think about, right? Like when you when no one is telling you outright, you're just like, oh, I think I need to win points, but just like hitting hard.
Yeah.
But then I think playing with height has 2 advantages. Like I was saying, it bails you out of tough situations because it gives you more time to come back to the tee and set yourself up well for the next shot. Which again, before I did that, I was feeling very rushed, right? Because I was hitting hard and the ball was flying all over the place, and it was like I was feeling very rushed during points. And then the other thing it does that I think people don't realize is it gives your opponent a very technically difficult shot to hit back, because most people are used to hitting like at waist height, right, and smacking the ball, and that's like the swing that you most practice in squash when you're doing solo practice. You're just like hitting against the wall, whatnot, and that's at sort of like waist height. When you hit a lob, you're forcing your opponent to hit above the shoulder, which is really, really technically challenging. And it often like gives you, it sets you up well for like the next ball, and it gives you a loose shot for you to like finish the point or like to put your opponent on the back foot. So again, something that like I didn't realize until I started doing it, but I slowly realized it's like, oh, when I'm giving these guys like a lob, like they can't really attack it that well, right? So again, that's something that was like a big unlock for my game.
That was number 7.
That's number 7.
Number 7, play with height.
Play with height.
Play with height. Rule number 8.
Short swings beat big winding swings. Again, big adjustment coming from tennis, where you have to generate a lot of your own power. You need to, hit the ball hard. It's coming from like a long distance from the other side of the court, and you have a lot of room to play. In squash, you're in a tiny little box with your opponent in it, and then you have to factor in lets and strokes and that sort of thing, which is something that is an adjustment for a tennis player or any racket sport where you're used to playing when you're used to being by yourself on one side of the net, which is most racket sports. And being able to generate power and also hit different kinds of shots with like a similar swing, that shorter swing. So being able to disguise your shots is essential, and I think that's also has to do a lot with developing that shorter swing. So again, you can like confuse your opponent or like hit a shot like
so you're still doing
your
the
shots
things
a little bit.
When I first learned squash, these 3 sort of timing things where you're rotating your whole body, your shoulder, you're swinging through, and you're keeping your wrist cocked, and sort of all that timing. You're still doing all of that, but just in a shorter, compact.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Again,
that one I didn't know about.
Yeah. And again, it's something. I'm not a squash coach, right? It's things that like I noticed that like have worked for me. But I think I see a lot of other people that come from tennis onto a squash court, and they're almost
they-
like they're like a danger to opponents as well too, right? Because like they're like they have like these big swings, and obviously one safety is important, but two is like you want to avoid as many lets and strokes as you can, right? And developing that shorter swing will allow your points to like flow more easily and then like avoid those lets and strokes.
Rule number 8, develop a shorter swing. I will have to work on that one. Rule number 9.
Don't hit as hard as you can. I think we've talked about it a little bit more, but again, it's something that tennis players do a lot. You're trying to finish points. As quickly as you can. And so the natural instinct is to just smack the ball around. And what ends up happening is the ball just flies around the court, bounces off the walls, and like sits up for your opponent to go for a kill shot. A concept that I sort of like learned when I was starting to play squash is playing with the appropriate amount of weight, or like a well-weighted shot, right? That's the most dangerous shot in squash, is a shot that like has just the right amount of power that it dies at the back of the court, doesn't bounce off the back wall. That's the shot that's hard for your opponent to dig out. And that shot is not hit by just smacking the ball. You really need to like develop a sense for what's the right amount of weight and power that you need to apply to the ball, so the ball like dies and makes it harder for your opponent to like return like a good shot from the back.
Rule number 9, well-weighted shots, not too much power. Rule number 10.
Suffocate your opponent instead of going for the flashy winner.
That sounds
intense.
Intense,
yeah. But really, squash is a game of wearing out your opponent. We were talking earlier about how squash matches are shorter than tennis matches, but squash is such a physically demanding sport. Even if the match is only 45 minutes, you are going to get winded. So being able to wear out your opponent and, like reaching like the latter parts of a match in better shape or with more energy than your opponent is going to win you a lot of matches. So instead of trying to finish the points quickly or end the matches quickly, like try to enjoy the torture, quote unquote.
So you're trying to tell me squash is for masochists?
It's a bit masochistic, but
sadists actually. Squash is for sadists. You don't want to hurt yourself. You want to hurt the other.
Yes, it's a bit masochistic, but I think that's really what once you sort of start going like up to higher levels of play, that's really what gets you what gets you those wins, is like when you're able to hang in there and I think a long point that you end up winning has, you don't only win the point, but you're also like getting an advantage for like the next 3 points, right? Like, and you can see the opponent sort of like heaving a little bit and whatnot. So
people will often say, even in the pros after a point like that, they'll say, "Oh, that was a big point."
Yes, and when they say it's a big point, it's because it's an inflection point, because it's taken so much out of your opponent that point, which only counts for 1 on the scoreboard, it's actually giving you an advantage for the rest of the game oftentimes, right? And you sort of like sense that when you're in a match. It's like you have a longer rally, something that's like where really like it tires both of the players out. But if you're able to win that point, it's gonna set you up well for the rest of the game and the rest of the match. So I think like focusing more, not so much on trying to win points early or win matches early and fast, but like try to enjoy a little bit how exhausting the sport is in itself, and being able to enjoy it a little bit more than your opponent, right? So you're able to like tire them out is essential in squash, I think. Again, and that allows you to reach the latter stages of a match in better shape. If your opponent, if you've had enough of those points, right? If you're able to tire your opponent out like early on, even a good player will start to miss more because their like movement gets worse. They can't set up as well. so just keeping that in mind, like even even though the squash match is short, like it doesn't get decided at the beginning, right? You really need to be able to go to like the very end, and sort of like focusing on like tiring your opponent out, I think is something that again, coming from tennis, something that you typically don't think about, but in squash I think is super essential.
That's all 10.
That's all 10.
Did you try to make 10 rules, or did it just
magically
work out?
It's a nice round number, so I thought, I thought I'd keep it at 10. I'm sure I'll learn more a lot. I'm constantly learning. Again, I'm somewhat like I have like a very sort of like analytical mind, and I like to like reverse engineer things. So every time I play, and I play like better opponents, I'm like always observing what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm developing more rules as every time I play. But yeah, those 10 are like the ones that, like, as I was thinking about it, the ones that have been like most crucial to my improvement.
So there are some very famous tennis players who are good squash players. The one I know is Federer. He plays squash as well.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. How has squash affected your tennis game?
I think the movement, again, like going back and forth between the two sports, I think that's the biggest difference.
Have you been able to separate them in your mind?
Exactly, yeah. The one that's like hardest to separate, just because it's like the most instinctive, right? When you're hitting the ball, right? In tennis you play top spin. In squash you hit flat shots or slice sometimes. So those are very different, and it's easier to switch between the two or change the mindset there. But movement is more instinctive. So now when I play tennis is interesting. Like sometimes like I'll be, I'll try to move laterally to try to get to a ball instead of like taking the small steps. I'm like instinctively trying to like lunge to the ball. So I need to remind myself of that. But to be honest with you, I mean, I've been playing a lot more squash since I've been living in New York. Again, tennis holds a special place in my heart. But really, squash has been my sport for the last couple of years since I moved to New York, and I've really come to love it a lot. It's a great workout, great mental workout as well, like all the tactics and gameplay and that sort of thing. So yeah, I just love it.
You don't need to persuade me. You got any other messages you want to give to a tennis player who's not tried squash?
Listen to this video, see if it inspires you. Again, I think it's such a great sport, especially if you live in New York, where tennis is harder to come by, it's more expensive, weather isn't great in the winter. Squash, you can play all year round. You can fit in between, meetings in your lunch break, which again is a huge selling point for me. So has a lot of benefits, great workout, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So encourage everyone to try it.
There's a little joke that we've had in the open squash staff. The weather's always great on a squash court.
I agree.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, James.
That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.